You knew exactly what you were doing, and you did it anyway. Don't stand there pretending.
I'm not pretending, Claire. I'm telling you the truth. Lower your finger.
The truth? Your version of it, maybe. You cost me a client in half a week.
Ladies.
That's all it took to destroy a career, expose a lifetime of buried prejudice, and turn an ordinary shopping trip into a moment that would change everything. A black woman walks into an upscale boutique, dressed impeccably, credit card ready. Within minutes, she's being pointed at, shouted at, told she doesn't belong. The clerk's finger jabs the air like a weapon. Her voice echoes off the mirrored walls. "This ain't for you." But what the clerk didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known, was who this woman really was. And in less than 5 minutes, that ignorance would cost her everything. What happened next didn't just end a job. It exposed a truth that had been hiding in plain sight for years.
Dr. Amara Thompson had learned long ago that excellence wasn't always enough. She'd learned it in medical school, where professors mispronounced her name semester after semester, despite her being at the top of her class. She'd learned it during her residency, when patients requested a real doctor before realizing she was the head of the department. And she'd learned it every single day as the chief of cardiology at Memorial Hospital, where her credentials spoke louder than her skin color, but only after people bothered to listen. Saturday morning found her with a rare commodity: free time. No surgery scheduled, no hospital emergencies demanding her attention, just a few precious hours to herself in the city's upscale shopping district, a place she rarely had time to visit despite living just 15 minutes away. The boutique she chose was called Lumine, French-sounding, expensive-looking, with crystalline windows that reflected the morning sunlight like diamonds. Inside, soft, classical music played through invisible speakers. The air smelled of vanilla and bergamot. Silk scarves draped artfully over mannequins wearing clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Amara had dressed casually by her standards: tailored navy blazer, cream blouse, designer jeans, and shoes that whispered money with every step. Her natural hair was pulled back in an elegant twist, pearl earrings catching the light. She carried a leather handbag that had been a gift to herself after her last promotion, a small indulgence earned through 16-hour days and life-or-death decisions. She wasn't here to prove anything. She was here to buy a gift for her mother's 70th birthday. Her mother, who had worked 2 jobs to put Amara through undergraduate studies. Her mother, who had never owned anything truly luxurious, but deserved everything. The store was quiet. 2 other customers browsed near the back, both white women in their 50s, speaking in hushed tones about an upcoming charity gala. Behind the counter stood 2 sales associates. One, an older woman with kind eyes, was helping a customer check out. The other was younger, blonde, her posture rigid with the kind of authority people claim when they don't actually have any. This younger clerk, her name tag read Brittany, tracked Amara's movement the moment she stepped inside, not with the warm attentiveness of someone ready to help, but with the cold surveillance of someone expecting theft. Amara noticed, of course. How could she not? She'd developed a 6th sense for it over the years, that particular quality of attention that had nothing to do with customer service and everything to do with suspicion. The way eyes followed her hands instead of meeting her face. The way bodies shifted to block exits rather than welcome entry. She dealt with it in grocery stores, in airports, in the lobby of her own hospital before people recognized her. Sometimes she called it out. Sometimes she ignored it. Today, she just wanted to shop in peace. "Can I help you?" Brittany's voice cut through the classical music, sharp and performative. It wasn't a greeting. It was a challenge. "Just browsing. Thank you." Amara replied smoothly, moving toward a display of cashmere scarves. Her fingers touched the fabric, impossibly soft, the color of champagne. Her mother would love this. "Those are quite expensive." Brittany had moved closer, abandoning her post behind the counter. Amara didn't turn around. "I'm sure they are. Just so you're aware of the prices before you..." handle things too much. Now Amara did turn, her expression calm but her eyes sharpening. I appreciate your concern. I'm perfectly capable of reading price tags. Something flickered across Brittany's face. Embarrassment maybe, or anger at being checked. The other two customers had stopped their conversation, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Even the older clerk had paused, glancing over with growing concern. But Brittany didn't back down. Instead, she crossed her arms, positioned herself between Amara and the display, and said words that seemed to crystallize all the tension in the room into something hard and undeniable. I'm just doing my job. We have to be careful with certain clientele. The word hung in the air like poison. Certain clientele. Everyone in the store knew exactly what she meant. Amara felt the familiar weight settle on her shoulders, the exhaustion of being excellent in a world that still saw her as suspicious first, human second. What she didn't know was that this moment, this insult, would be the beginning of something much bigger.
Amara stood perfectly still, the champagne-colored scarf still between her fingers. The classical music continued its gentle waltz through the speakers, absurdly cheerful against the suffocating tension that had filled the boutique. "Excuse me?" Her voice was quiet, controlled, the same voice she used when delivering bad news to families in the ICU. Calm on the surface, storm underneath. Brittany's chin lifted, her blonde ponytail swaying with false confidence. "You heard me. We have policies here. High-end merchandise requires appropriate customers." The older clerk, her name tag read Susan, stepped forward, alarm clear on her face. "Brittany, that's not—" "I've got this, Susan." Brittany's tone was dismissive, her attention laser-focused on Amara. "She needs to understand how things work here." "How things work here," Amara repeated slowly. "And how exactly do things work here?" "Look, I'm not trying to be rude," Brittany began, though her entire demeanor suggested otherwise. "Yet you're succeeding brilliantly." A flush crept up Brittany's neck. The two customers in the back had abandoned all pretense of shopping and were openly watching now, their expressions a mix of horror and fascination. Neither moved to intervene. "I'm just saying," Brittany continued, her voice rising. "We get people coming in here all the time, touching things they can't afford, wasting our time, and I can tell just by looking that you're probably not in the market for what we're selling." "By looking?" Amara let the words sit between them. "Tell me, Brittany, when you look at me, what exactly do you see?" Brittany's mouth opened, then closed. She seemed to realize, perhaps for the first time, that she'd stepped into dangerous territory. But pride, or prejudice, or perhaps some toxic combination of both, wouldn't let her retreat. "I see someone who doesn't fit our usual customer profile," she said, as if using corporate language would somehow sanitize the racism dripping from every word. "Someone who might be more comfortable at other stores." "Other stores." Amara's laugh was sharp, bitter. "You mean cheaper stores. You mean stores for people who look like me." "That's not what I—" "Yes, it is." Amara stepped forward, and Brittany instinctively stepped back. "You took one look at my skin and decided I didn't belong here, that I couldn't possibly afford a scarf from your precious boutique, that I was wasting your time by existing in your space?" Susan had moved around the counter now, wringing her hands. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. This is completely unacceptable. Brittany, apologize right now." "Why should I apologize?" Brittany's voice had gone shrill, defensive. She was pointing now, her finger jabbing toward Amara like an accusation. "I'm protecting our inventory. Do you know how many times we've had problems with—" "With what?" Amara's voice cut through like a scalpel. "Say it. Finish that sentence." The boutique fell silent except for Mozart playing obliviously overhead. The two customers in the back exchanged uncomfortable glances. One whispered something to the other, probably debating whether to leave, whether to say something, whether to acknowledge what they were witnessing. Brittany's face had gone red,
a blotchy flush spreading down her neck. She was breathing hard, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "I don't have to explain myself to you. You're the one who needs to leave." "I'm sorry, leave?" Amara felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. "This ain't for you." Brittany practically shouted it, her composure completely shattered. She gestured wildly at the store, at the elegant displays and the price tags that represented more zeros than she probably earned in a week. The words echoed off the mirrored walls, bouncing between the designer handbags and silk scarves like bullets ricocheting in a shooting gallery. Susan gasped audibly. One of the customers in the back pulled out her phone. Whether to call someone or record the interaction, Amara couldn't tell. But Amara just stood there, arms at her sides, chin raised. She'd been here before. Not in this exact boutique, not with this exact woman, but in this exact moment. The moment when someone else's prejudice became so naked, so undeniable, that it couldn't be explained away or softened with polite language. "You're refusing me service," Amara said quietly, "because of the color of my skin?" "That's not... I never said..." Brittany was floundering now, realizing perhaps that she'd said the quiet part loud. "You're twisting my words." "I'm repeating them. You need to leave before I call the security." "Security." Amara nodded slowly. "Yes, call security. Please, I'd love to hear you explain to them exactly why I need to be removed from a store where I haven't touched anything, haven't raised my voice, haven't done anything except exist while black." Brittany grabbed for the phone behind the counter. Her hands were shaking, with rage or fear or the dawning realization that she'd made a terrible mistake. Amara couldn't tell. Susan had tears in her eyes now. "Brittany, stop. Just stop. You're going to get yourself fired. You're going to get us all." "I'm calling the manager," Brittany interrupted, her fingers already dialing. "Mr. Peterson will back me up. He knows we have to maintain certain standards here." The word standards landed like a slap. Amara felt the old, familiar exhaustion settling into her bones. She thought of her mother, waiting at home for the birthday gift that wouldn't come. She thought of the champagne scarf that would have looked beautiful against her mother's dark skin. She thought of every moment like this she'd endured, in restaurants, in banks, in stores just like this one. How many times had she been excellent enough to overcome it? How many credentials had she accumulated? How many lives had she saved? And yet here she stood, being told by a sales clerk that she didn't belong in a boutique she could probably buy outright. The door chimed. Footsteps approached, confident, masculine, assured. "What seems to be the problem here?" The voice was smooth, practiced, belonging to a man in an expensive suit with silver hair and an air of authority that suggested he was used to solving problems by simply arriving. "Mr. Peterson," the manager. Brittany's face transformed, relief flooding her features. "Mr. Peterson, thank God! This woman is causing a disturbance, and I've asked her to leave, but she's refusing." "I've caused a disturbance," Amara repeated flatly. Brittany felt threatened. One of the customers suddenly spoke up, her voice carrying clearly across the store. Everyone turned to look at her, a woman in her 50s with perfectly coiffed gray hair and a designer handbag that probably cost more than a car payment. The other customer nodded vigorously, like a bobblehead. Very aggressive. Brittany was just trying to help. Amara stared at them, something like despair mixing with her anger. They were going to do this. They were going to rewrite what had happened right in front of her, as if she hadn't been there, as if her reality didn't matter. Mr. Peterson's expression shifted, hardening. He looked at Amara with the kind of cold assessment that made decisions before gathering facts. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises." "On what grounds?" "Creating a hostile environment for my staff and customers." "I created the hostile environment." "That's fascinating." "If you don't leave voluntarily, I will call the police." The threat hung in the air. Call the police. On a black woman, in an upscale boutique, for the crime of shopping while black. Susan was openly crying now, but she said nothing. The two customers had pulled out their phones, definitely recording now, though I suspect the footage would somehow support their version of events. Brittany stopped behind Mr. Peterson, arms crossed, vindicated, and Amara stood alone, surrounded by mirrors reflecting her image back at her. A successful doctor in expensive clothes being treated like a criminal. "Fine," she said quietly. "I'll leave. But first, I need to tell you something." Mr. Peterson's jaw tightened. "Ma'am? My name is Dr. Amara Thompson. I'm the chief of cardiology at Memorial Hospital. And you?" She looked directly at Mr. Peterson, then at Brittany, then at the two customers still clutching their phones. "You just discriminated against a member of your hospital's board of directors." The color drained from Brittany's face, but Amara wasn't finished.
The silence that followed was absolute. Even Mozart seemed to pause, holding his breath. Mr. Peterson's confident expression cracked, confusion bleeding through. What did you say?" "You heard me." Amara pulled her phone from her handbag with deliberate slowness, her hands no longer shaking. The anger had crystallized into something cold and clear. "Memorial Hospital. You know it, I'm sure. It's the largest employer in this district. Your boutique is in the Memorial Medical Plaza. You pay rent to the hospital's property management division." She watched realization dawn across his face like a sunrise, slow and inexorable. "I sit on the board that approves all commercial leases in this building. I'm also the doctor who operated on Councilman Richards last month. You might have seen it on the news. The successful surgery that saved a beloved public servant's life. That was me. The woman you just threatened to have arrested for trying to buy a birthday gift for her mother." Brittany had gone completely white. She'd backed up against the counter, her earlier bravado evaporating like morning fog under sunlight. I didn't know." "Didn't know I was important?" Amara's eyes were steel. "Or didn't know I was human? Which part surprised you, Brittany? That a black woman could afford your scarves, or that she might deserve basic respect regardless?" "Ma'am, Dr. Thompson, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding." Mr. Peterson had switched into damage control mode, his voice suddenly oily with deference. He took a step toward her, hands raised placatorily. "Don't." Amara's single word stopped him cold. "Don't insult me further by calling this a misunderstanding. I understood perfectly. You all made yourselves crystal clear." She turned to the two customers, who had lowered their phones, faces pale with dawning horror. "You saw the whole thing, didn't you? You watched her profile me, refuse me service, tell me this store ain't for me, and you chose to lie, to rewrite reality in real time, to protect someone who was so obviously, blatantly discriminating against me." Neither woman met her eyes. "Do you know what that makes you? Not innocent bystanders, accomplices." Susan sobbed quietly behind the counter, still saying nothing, still frozen in her guilt and complicity through silence. Amara pulled up her contacts, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency. "I'm going to make 3 phone calls now. The first is to Jeremy Nakamura, the president of Memorial Hospital's board. He's going to be very interested to hear about this incident, especially given your lease renewal comes up in 6 months." Mr. Peterson's face went ashen. "Dr. Thompson, please, let's talk about this." "The second call," Amara continued, ignoring him, "is to Jasmine Williams at Channel 7 News. She's been covering healthcare disparity stories, but I think she'll find this retail discrimination angle compelling, especially with witness testimony.
She looked pointedly at Susan, who flinched. There's always someone willing to tell the truth. Eventually. You're going to ruin us, Brittany whispered, tears now streaming down her cheeks. Please, I have student loans. I need this job. You should have thought about that before you decided my skin color determined my worth. Before you made me feel unwelcome in a store I had every right to enter. Before you humiliated me in front of strangers for the audacity to shop while black. It won't happen again, Mr. Peterson pleaded. I'll personally ensure. It won't happen again here, Amara corrected, because neither of you will work here again. But it will happen again somewhere else, to someone else who doesn't have my credentials or platform or ability to fight back. And that's why I'm making that third call. Her finger hovered over the contact labeled Marcus, attorney. The third call is to my attorney. We're filing a formal discrimination complaint and a civil suit. Not for the money, I don't need your money, but for the record. So that when you apply for your next job, Mr. Peterson, when you fill out your next rental application, Brittany, this follows you, the way this moment will follow me. Please, Brittany was openly crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Please, I'm sorry, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. That's the problem. You absolutely meant it. You looked at me and made a decision based on nothing but my appearance. You reduced me to a stereotype, a threat, something less than human. And you felt entitled to do it. Mr. Peterson tried one last time. Dr. Thompson, I understand you're upset, but destroying careers. I'm not destroying anything, Amara interrupted, her voice rising for the first time, cracking with the weight of every insult she'd ever swallowed, every insult she'd ever ignored, every moment she'd had to prove herself twice as hard for half the recognition. You destroyed your own careers the moment you chose racism over humanity. I'm just making sure there are consequences. She pressed dial on the first number. Hello, Jeremy. It's Amara. I need to talk to you about a situation involving one of our commercial tenants. Do you have a few minutes? Brittany sank to her knees behind the counter, her whole body shaking. Mr. Peterson stood frozen, watching his comfortable world collapse. The two customers had disappeared, slipping out the door like ghosts fleeing daylight. And Susan finally found her voice. I'm sorry. I should have said something. I should have stopped it. I'm so sorry. Amara looked at her, really looked at her, and saw genuine remorse, but remorse without action was just guilt with good manners. Yes, she said simply. You should have. She walked toward the door, phone still pressed to her ear, her posture straight, her head high. She paused at the threshold, one hand on the door, and turned back. That champagne scarf, it would have been perfect for my mother. She's turning 70 next week. She cleaned houses to pay for my education. She worked herself to the bone so I could become someone who wouldn't be treated like this. And yet, here we are. She pushed the door open, the chime sounding almost like a bell tolling. Remember that when you're looking for new jobs. Remember the gift that never got bought. Remember the dignity you couldn't be bothered to extend. And then she was gone, leaving behind a boutique full of mirrors reflecting nothing but the wreckage of prejudice exposed.
3 days later.
The story broke. Channel 7 News led with it. Prominent surgeon discriminated against in luxury boutique. Jasmine Williams' report was thorough, devastating. It included security footage not from inside Luminae, but from the hallway outside, showing Dr. Amara Thompson entering the store professionally dressed, empty-handed, and leaving 20 minutes later with her head held high despite visible distress. Susan had come forward. She'd provided her own recording, audio captured on her phone, hidden in her pocket, preserving every word of Brittany's discrimination, every plea she'd made that had been ignored, every threat Mr. Peterson had issued. Her voice shook as she spoke to reporters. "I was a coward. I watched it happen and said nothing when it mattered. I can't take that back, but I can make sure the truth comes out." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Memorial Hospital's board issued a statement condemning the incident and announcing they would not be renewing Luminae's lease. "We cannot, in good conscience, continue a business relationship with an establishment that discriminates against the very people we serve," the statement read. "Dr. Thompson represents the best of our institution, and the treatment she received is antithetical to our values." Brittany was fired within 24 hours. Her tearful apology video, posted on social media, was widely criticized as self-serving. "I'm sorry if anyone was offended" isn't actually an apology when you refuse to admit what you did wrong. Mr. Peterson was also terminated. The corporate owners of Luminae issued their own statement. "This incident represents a catastrophic failure of management and a violation of our company's anti-discrimination policies." The boutique closed permanently 6 weeks later, unable to recover from the public relations disaster and loss of their anchor location. The two customers who had lied were identified through social media. Their names trended on Twitter for 2 days, not with praise. One lost her position on a non-profit board. The other deactivated all her accounts and disappeared from public view. But the story didn't end with firings and closures. Amara used her growing platform to do something transformative. She launched an initiative called Seen and Valued, a program training retail employees on implicit bias, racial profiling, and the real human cost of snap judgments based on appearance. She partnered with major retailers, requiring the training as part of employee onboarding. "This wasn't about revenge," she told Jasmine Williams in a follow-up interview that aired 2 weeks later. "It was about accountability, and more importantly, it was about change. How many people experience this every day but don't have the platform to fight back? How many talented, brilliant, deserving people are made to feel less than because of the color of their skin?" The interview showed footage of Amara at Memorial Hospital, in her element, saving lives with the same hands Brittany had suspected of theft. It showed her with her mother, who finally received her birthday gift, a champagne scarf from a different boutique, delivered with a handwritten note from the store owner expressing solidarity and shame that such treatment had happened anywhere. "What my daughter experienced," Mrs. Thompson said softly on camera, her fingers touching the scarf, "is what I experienced my whole life. The difference is she had the power to make people listen. But every person, regardless of education or position or influence, deserves that same basic dignity." The story sparked a national conversation. #ThisAin'tForYou became a rallying cry, with thousands of people sharing their own experiences of retail racism, workplace discrimination, everyday indignities that accumulate like weights on the soul. Some outlets tried to focus on whether Amara had been too harsh in her response, whether the punishment fit the crime, whether people deserved second chances. But Amara was clear in every interview. "I've given second chances my entire life. Every time I've ignored a slur,
overlooked a microaggression, smiled through discomfort to make others comfortable. Those were second chances. Brittany and Mr. Peterson chose their actions. I'm simply ensuring there are consequences. 6 months later, Luminay's parent company implemented Amara's training program across all their locations nationwide. It wasn't voluntary. It was written into their settlement agreement, along with a substantial donation to organizations fighting retail discrimination. Brittany never worked in retail again. Mr. Peterson took a job in a warehouse, far from customer interaction. Susan became an advocate, speaking at schools and businesses about the importance of speaking up, about how silence in the face of injustice makes you complicit. And Amara, she continued saving lives. But now when she walked into stores, when she moved through the world in her expensive clothes and pearl earrings, she carried something new, the knowledge that her voice had power, and she'd used it not just for herself, but for everyone who'd ever been told, in bays big and small, this ain't for you. Because excellence without dignity is exhausting, and no one should have to be exceptional just to be treated as human. The real question isn't whether Amara was right to fight back. The question is, why are we still having this conversation? Why, in 2025, does the color of someone's skin still determine how they're treated in a store, in a job interview, in everyday interactions? This story is real in ways that matter, even if the names are changed. It happens every day in every city, to people with credentials and people without them, to people who can fight back and people who can't. So here's what I'm asking you. What will you do the next time you witness discrimination? Will you record it and do nothing? Will you look away? Or will you be the person who speaks up, who refuses to let it slide, who remembers that silence isn't neutrality, it's choosing the side of the oppressor? Share this story. Tag someone who needs to hear it. And more importantly, commit to being different. Commit to seeing people as human first, regardless of what they look like, where they come from, or what you assume about them. Because this ain't just about retail. This is about the world we're building together. One choice, one action, one moment of courage at a time. The question is, which side of that moment will you be on?